From the News Channel 5 network, this is SportsLine.
Hey there, SportsLine on your television. Steve Layman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Monday night on News Channel 5. Plus a historic Monday in Nashville as the city woke up today to the sweet realization that the hockey season actually lasts beyond the first week of May and even beyond the second week of May. And as long as you can keep on winning till mid-June, the Predators advancing past the second round for the first time ever yesterday, beating the Blues 3-1 in Game 6, taking the series 4-2 to advance to the Western Conference Final. An absolutely incredible postseason performance by this team so far. They've won 8 of 10 games. Everything seems to have finally come together for a team that had such high hopes at the start of the year, but rocky start, injuries, especially on the blue line throughout the course of the season, seemed to derail their progress. They get into the playoffs as the second wild card in the Western Conference and have to go up against the Stanley Cup favorites from the start in the Chicago Blackhawks. And here they are 8 wins later in the Western Conference Final. And now, as we sit here tonight, according to the good folks in Las Vegas, the experts out there in the desert, the current favorite to win the Stanley Cup is your Nashville Predators at 15-4 odds. The Penguins also share those odds, so they are co-favorites. But the Penguins are currently losing tonight in Game 6 at home to the Washington Capitals. That would mean a Game 7 back in Washington. So they might not even be around in the playoffs in a couple of days. Whichever team comes out of that series is going to be a healthy threat the rest of the way, as any team is at this point. But it just goes to show you how well this team is playing right now. That they get into the playoffs as the second wild card in the Western Conference, and now may very well be the favorites to win the Stanley Cup. And it's going to be a battle. The Preds will not have home ice advantage in either of these final rounds, no matter who they play against. They will face teams that are hot in the playoffs just like they were. They will face some really good teams. I mean, either the Penguins, who won the championship last year, or the Capitals, who won the President's Trophy again this year, are going to be battle-tested. They're going to be good. They're going to be hungry. So this will be a battle. Peter Laviolette said it after round 1 against Chicago. This is great that we beat the Blackhawks, that we beat a favorite, and that we advanced. But each round of this thing gets tougher, gets more challenging, gets faster, gets tighter. The intensity is more as you get closer and feel like you can reach out and grab that cup. I think we saw that in round 2. I thought the Blues played pretty darn well. And even as they realized that a lot of their efforts weren't enough because the Predators just seemed to have sort of the matchup edge in this series, they upped their intensity level more. They played their best 2 games in that series, in Game 5 at home in St. Louis, which they won, and then in Game 6 here in Nashville. The Blues yesterday were really good. They started well. They were the aggressors in the first period. They were clearly the better team on the ice in the first period. Jake Allen was phenomenal throughout. In the third period, when they had to kind of sell out after Arvidsson hit Johansson for the go-ahead goal, I mean, at that point, you got to throw everything out and you got to really try and attack because you have to have a goal or the season's over. They left Allen out to drive several times, and he came up big each time, stopping 3 different breakaways in the third period. The only thing that eventually got in and put the game away was an empty netter after they pulled Allen to get the extra attacker on in the final couple of minutes. The Blues were really good. They made it hard. And that tells you how good the Preds were. Pekka Rinne continues to be phenomenal in the postseason. .950+ save percentage, just over a goal per game through now 10 games in the postseason, 8 wins. That extra rest in the regular season seems to have really benefited him. to be at his best. And now he's kind of rewriting his own legacy, which was really good for his career. But based off of what he's doing now, and if this can continue, it paints his career and his time here in Nashville in a different light based off of what he's doing right now. The top line comes up huge again yesterday. They were so good against Chicago. A little bit more quiet against the really physical Blues in round 2. But when it mattered the most yesterday, earlier in the third period, with that game tied, Forsberg collects a puck. Great pass to Arvidsson. Springs him loose. Johansson's coming up. Perfect, patient pass on his tape. Beautiful finish for Johansson for what proved to be the game winner past Allen. Those guys continue to rise to the occasion and lead this team in the playoffs. Mike Fisher, dedicated captain, terrific job leading this team. Colin Wilson coming back from injury, being a factor in this series. Craig Smith gutting it out yesterday. I thought his speed was a real important factor. You've got contributions everywhere. James Neal, great in this series. You've got line help just about everywhere on this team. In terms of the balance of scoring, 13 different guys, I believe, have scored for the Preds in the postseason. 8 different guys have scored game winners. Each game, a new hero for the Nashville Predators, and that's what has made this postseason so fun for them. Peter Laviolette pushing all the right buttons. And how about a round of applause for David Poile, a guy who just has been there every step of the way in this franchise, the only general manager the Predators and their fans have ever known. And he has had to wear many different hats here. At first, he tried to just sort of get Nashville to embrace hockey, a non-traditional market. Not a lot of people here knew much about the NHL or about ice hockey. He built a team to be competitive early on, to be fun early on. It took him a few years, as it does for all expansion teams. But in fairly short order, they became a team that threatened to knock on the door of the playoffs and then get to the playoffs. They had a couple really successful seasons there. And then all of a sudden you have the ownership fiasco where everything seems like it's on rocky footing here in Nashville. The team might be forced to be sold and moved to Ontario. And it was just a really tough time about 10 years in. And he managed to keep the thing afloat on the ice with the players. Keep growing the fan base here. Ultimately, the ownership thing was figured out. Tom Sigaran comes in with the local ownership group and solidifies the team here in Nashville. That was huge. A huge moment for the city, a huge moment for the team. But meanwhile, David Poile in the background just continues to push this team along to build it in the right way. And once that was settled and this team was solid, this has been one of the most consistent teams in the NHL over the last 7 or 8 seasons. About just continually being tough to play against and getting into the playoffs. And when he made the difficult decision to go away from Barry Trotz a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, and hire Peter Laviolette, to me that was a real sign that David Poile now viewed his job no longer as kind of the caretaker in Nashville to make sure this team was gaining fans and staying relevant here. Because for a while I don't think you could take some of the extreme risks, because if it failed or if you gave up too much for a future year, you run the risk of not being a playoff team. And you run the risk of losing that interest in the springtime, which is when you make your headway here. Because let's face it, in the fall, football is king in the South. And so you have to be relevant in January and February and March when you get to that time of year. He's done that here over and over and over again. It's helped them grow the fan base, get to the playoffs. Even if you don't win a round, if you just get to the playoffs and have that excitement, it helps you grow the fan base here. He's done that. But 3 years ago, when he made that move to Peter Laviolette, to me that was a real sign that it was no longer about just getting to the playoffs, just being relevant. It was time for this team to take the next step and become a contender. And some of the moves he's made, essentially fleecing Washington for Philip Forsberg, who's turned out to be the leading goal scorer for the team over the last couple of years. Ryan Johansson, the top-line center that this team long needed. He got him early in his career, paid a big price in dealing Seth Jones to Columbus for him, but Johansson now looks exactly like the top-line center that the Preds so desperately needed and wanted. And then the blockbuster last summer to go from Shea Weber, your captain, to PK Subban. A perfect piece for the way Peter Laviolette wants to play with the Nashville Predators. And now here they are, all of that seemingly coming together and gelling at the perfect time in the playoffs. And the Preds are now in the Western Conference Finals. You looked at those guys yesterday coming off the ice. Obviously an excited team. Obviously an excited head coach Peter Laviolette. But the smile was ear to ear for David Poile, and rightfully so, because of the job he's done with the Nashville Predators for so long. Again, wearing many different hats, building an expansion team, getting to the playoffs, keeping the team relevant through rocky ownership, and now building one of the most consistent teams in the NHL that is now a contender to win the whole thing. It's been fun. It's been a really fun month, and we've got at least 2 more weeks of this to keep talking about and keep celebrating the Preds. It has been a very, very fun spring so far. Phone lines are open tonight. Where did you watch the game yesterday? Were you lucky enough to be in attendance, and what did you think about the atmosphere? Because Smashville was bonkers yesterday. It was just terrific. Walking into that arena about a half an hour before puck drop yesterday, you could just feel the excitement and the tension in the air. It was so thick, you could almost chew on it as you got into the building. That's how much buzz there was. It was truly palpable energy in that arena before the game started yesterday. And several points throughout, I thought it was the loudest I've ever heard that building. And that is one of the loudest buildings I've ever been in for a sporting venue. It is absolutely incredible, the home ice advantage the Predators have in these playoffs. They've now won 9 straight home playoff games dating back to last year. That will be a huge advantage whenever they go into the next round, because while they won't have home ice advantage in the series in terms of number of games, if they can steal a game on the road, they're going to feel really good about themselves yet again when they come home for games 3 and 4 and ultimately game 6, because it seems so unlikely now that someone can come in here and win. They feel invincible on that home ice. Second come-from-behind win in the playoffs yesterday at home. The overtime game against Chicago, then yesterday from down 1-0. Several of those games tied in the third period where they were able to make a final charge and win. Just such a great day yesterday. I want to hear from you. Where did you watch the game? Were you fortunate enough to be in the building, and what did you think? And what's next now for the Predators as they get set for the Western Conference Final? They'll have to wait for Wednesday night, Game 7 between the Oilers and Ducks, to find out who that opponent will be. Phone lines are open. 737-7767 is the number. We begin tonight with Tiffany. Tiffany, good evening.
Steve, you know, I am just so happy right now. I'm just speechless. It's like it's starting to get scary now because the Stanley Cup is within view. You know, I mean, this is unreal. I'm trying to just wrap my mind around this, but I'm just so happy and so proud of the Nashville Predators. I love them, and I want to send out much love to David Poile, like you said, for putting this team together, being the mastermind that he is, making trades that a lot of people didn't agree with, but now we see it all come to fruition, and Coach Laviolette for being a great coach, and just this team has such depth, and that's what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. You know, I'm so happy for the Preds. I cannot wait for the next home game. I have got to come down to that plaza party because I really think that this team can win the Stanley Cup if we just hold it together, just keep playing like we have, because to me, Chicago and St. Louis were harder, you know, better teams than Edmonton or Anaheim. To me, that's my opinion. Now, the challenge will be like Pittsburgh or the Capitals. You know, one of them teams I think could be a real challenge. But everybody else, I think we got this, you know. And I just want to talk about Pekka for a minute. I can remember when Pekka played for the Admirals. I used to see him come to training camp. That's back when Mason was the goalie and Voku. was still in Milwaukee. But when he would come to Nashville to training camp, I saw in him he had a special gift. I knew Pekka was going to be a great goalie, and I'm just so happy that Pekka is getting this chance on the world stage. He deserves it, and I hope that everything in me that the prayers will win a Stanley Cup.
Be phenomenal, Tiffany. Thanks for the call as always. Pekka Rinne is one of the best guys that you can deal with in sports. And he's been so good here for so long and also never gotten to this point. And it's just great to see him now at 34 years of age to be completely healthy and to be able to put forth the effort that he's had in the postseason. I mean, if the Predators won the Stanley Cup today, or if the playoffs ended today and the Predators were there, I think Pekka Rinne is the Conn Smythe MVP because of how good he's been in the postseason. And that's awesome because the injuries recently, the taxing nature of being really the only goaltender on this team up until this year and the emergence of UC Saros, people started to question how much longer he had left or if he could ever find that really elite form again. Now we're not sure if we've ever seen him play as well as he's playing in these playoffs. So that's a really fun thing to see. And you talk about the rest of the playoff matchups. They're all going to be very difficult, no matter what they are. But here's the thing. This is a team now that just has a belief about them. Just has a belief that they can go out and win. And Tiffany pointed to the depth of the team. That's incredibly important. I think the Predators' success in these playoffs is really twofold. Besides Pekka, you'll have to have a good goaltender to succeed in the playoffs. I think that's obvious. But the thing that set them apart from past editions of the Predators with Pekka Rinne in goal is the top line of Johansson, Arvidsson, and Forsberg, and their ability to match up with anyone else's. I mean, I think they've been the best top line in both of these first two series. You've never really been able to say that before about a Predators team. When they play the Blackhawks or play the Ducks or the Sharks, when they went out there against their top line, you felt like, oh, can we just sort of hold our own and just not get killed on the top line? Now you feel like you can take advantage of the top line. So that's been enormous. And then the next thing is the depth in the lines. The fact that you have 13 different guys that have scored, 8 different guys that have scored game winners. You've got a guy like Colton Sissons, who wasn't even in the lineup middle of the year. He's now got 6 points in the playoffs, including a pair of goals back in the first series against Chicago. This is just a team now that has illustrated a level of depth that we've never seen before, and that is what you have to have in a long playoff series. Because we talk about injuries throughout the year, but how about the injuries in these playoffs? I mean, Colin Wilson is known as playoffs Colin Wilson for how good he's been in the postseason in his career. He wasn't even able to play in the first round series against Chicago, and he comes back and he's ready to go now. Craig Smith out of the lineup. Find other guys to step in. The depth of this team has been really important. Let's sneak another phone call in here. Let's go to Mike. Mike, good evening.
Hey, my friend. Hey, I'd like to ask a question. When we have the final championship of the Predators winning the finality, I'm sticking that in for them. Will it be played in Nashville? And I'm praying also that right after that, as soon as football season gets here, the Titans will be playing in the Super Bowl, and we'll just be a booming town, and people want to come see what we got and what we got, because we got the best fans all the way around. And I'll hang up. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Things are certainly looking up on the sports front here in Nashville with the Predators in the Western Conference Final. And lots of excitement about a Titans team that won 9 games last year. Young quarterback in Marcus Mariota, several other young pieces to build around for the future. To answer your question about the Stanley Cup Final, parts of it will be played here if the Predators get there. They will not have home ice advantage. So if the Predators reach the Stanley Cup Final, they will host games 3 and 4 for sure, and hopefully game 6 as you go if necessary. Or maybe they can wrap it up before game 6, but possibly game 6 if necessary. And in terms of winning it, it just depends where it lands. If you can win it in 4 like against the Blackhawks or 6 against the Blues, it'll be here in Nashville. If it's in a Game 5 or a Game 7, it'll be in the other arena of the team from the Eastern Conference who will have home ice advantage because of the better record throughout the course of the regular season. Either way, if the Predators win the Stanley Cup, I can promise you there will be a massive, massive party like this town has never seen before on Broadway when it goes down. It was incredible yesterday after the game, just seeing the people flood out into the streets around Bridgestone Arena. Broadway had to be shut down because there were just so many Preds fans out there chanting "Let's go Preds" and cheering and hugging and taking pictures and all those sort of things. It was quite the scene, and that scene is only going to grow as these games get bigger and bigger in the playoffs. We got to take a break. We'll come back more. Your phone calls, 737-7767 is the number. Possible to hear from some of those Preds heroes from yesterday as well. So stay tuned. You're watching SportsLine on News Channel 5+.